Hey, it's Josh High here with Swift Home Mortgage. How much money do you actually need to buy a house? Most buyers are wrong about this before they even ever talk to a lender. They think buying a house is all about down payment, but it's not. And that bad assumption keeps a lot of people stuck longer than they need to be. If you're trying to buy a house in Florida and you're asking how much money do you actually need, you need to look at the full picture, because the real answer is not just one number. It's a few different buckets of money that hit at different times. So once you understand these buckets, the whole thing starts to make a lot more sense. Most people are looking at the wrong number. When buyers ask how much money they need, most of them are only really thinking about the down payment. And that's where the confusion starts. Down payment's only one part of the whole deal in the cash to close. If you want a real answer, you have to look at total cash needed from start to finish. That includes what's due up front, what's due at closing, and what can shift depending on the loan that you're in and the different fees that are associated and setup costs and all that stuff. And the property, it's a huge one. And how that deal is structured overall. That's the conversation buyers really need to be having. Because if you only focus on one number, you're probably going to either overestimate what it takes and get surprised later, or you're going to underestimate and have that same surprise. Down payment is only part of the story. Let's start with the most obvious piece, that down payment. Yes, it is part of buying a house. It's a big part, but a lot of people still assume they need 20% down. And that's one of the biggest reasons why a lot of buyers rule themselves out way too early. Different loan programs have different minimum down payment requirements. Some buyers may need a small down payment. Some might decide to put more down to have a smaller payment monthly and roll their equity from an old house. Some may qualify for options that may change that number quite a bit, like down payment assistance. So when somebody asks me how much they need down, the answer really depends on the type of financing and their strategy for buying this next house. And just because a program allows the lowest possible down payment does not automatically mean that that's the best move. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. That decision should be based on a real plan, not just an internet myth. This is where buyers get blindsided. Closing costs are where a lot of buyers get caught off guard, because even if the down payment is lower than expected, closing costs are still there. This can include lender fees, title fees, settlement fees, recording charges, and any other transaction costs tied to closing and processing that loan. And this is separate from the down payment. And that's the part that people miss. A buyer may tell me that they have saved enough money for a low down payment, but that alone doesn't tell me whether or not they're ready to absorb the closing costs and to deal with everything else that comes along with buying the house. We still have to account for the rest of the transaction. That's why real estimates early in the process help so much and get a clear picture for what you're getting into. They replace guesswork with actual numbers. Prepaids are the part nobody ever talks about. This is one of the least understood parts of buying a home. Prepaids and escrow setup. This can include things like homeowner's insurance, prepaid interest, and the money collected to set up escrows and taxes for your insurance over the course of the next year when your new loan starts. And this piece can move around a lot more than you expect. It can change based on the property, the time of year with taxes. Do you need flood insurance, your tax structure, insurance costs, hazard insurance, flood insurance? There's different kinds of insurances you can buy for your house. Different houses require different kinds of insurance. And that's why broad advice online really only takes you so far. At some point, somebody has to sit down and run the actual numbers tied to your specific deal, financing, and property. Take these two deals, for instance. This is a loan estimate that just went out this week on a property that just went to contract. The price points are a little bit different, but the comparison remains the same. One's going to be in Winter Haven. One's going to be in Riverview. Okay, the one in Winter Haven, their insurance premium is going to be, where are we here? $2,505 per year. Okay. On the other one, their insurance premium is going to be $3,600 per year. That's just an estimate at this point. The big one on here is the tax bill. So on the taxes of this house, the Winter Haven house, they get the benefit of that homeowner that's selling the house. The seller has lived there for a very long time, and so their taxes are only $600 until it reassesses going forward. So they get the benefit of paying that low tax bill for the first year and a half of owning that property until it reassesses. Now, this other house in Riverview, this is a non-homesteaded property. That means that the people living in it that's probably not their primary residence. It might be a rental, might be a second home. Their tax bill is upwards of $8,900. So that right there, look how big that swing is. You're talking about an $8,300 swing just in prepaids. Okay. So everything else being equal, I could buy two houses that are exactly the same, one across the street from each other. And if those tax bills are different, my cash to close and prepaids are going to be different when it comes time to close. So keep that in mind. You always have to dig into the real numbers. Earnest money or good faith deposits count, but people misunderstand it. Earnest money is another area where buyers get confused. A lot of people think it's just extra money on top of everything else. Usually earnest money gets credited towards what you own at closing. Think of it as all one big pot. You put your good faith deposit or your earnest money into the pot, and it sits there at the title company and waits for the loan to close and all the other money to show up. And if you're buying that house for $200,000, you've already paid $1,000 in. So now all you have to pay is $199,000, right? It's all in the same pot. So in most of these cases, it's not an added cost on top of the transaction, but it is money that you need access to early. And that timing can create pressure for a buyer even when the total number does not change. So when you are asking how much money you need, you have to think about when you need it. And that's a big piece of planning and preparing to purchase. There are also some costs that show up before closing. Buyers need to think about the costs that show up before they ever get to that closing table. Things like appraisals and inspections, insurance inspections, or any kind of specialty inspection you might need. You might want to hire a pool company to come out and inspect the pool equipment, or you might want to get a roofer involved in a complex roof that might have some age on it. And these are easy to overlook when somebody is focused on the bigger picture and the bigger closing, but they are real numbers and they are real dollars, and they're part of that full cash to close picture. So again, there's usually not just one magic number. There's a sequence of costs that come up through the transaction, and when buyers understand that sequence ahead of time, the whole process feels a lot less chaotic because you're able to plan for it and anticipate what's coming. Low cash to close is not always the best strategy. A lot of buyers ask, how can we get the cash to close in our hands? And that's not always the best question. Sometimes the better question is how to structure the deal in a way that still leaves the buyer in a solid position after closing. If you're buying a house, you really should account for your life after closing too. But from a loan strategy standpoint, the main focus is knowing how much cash you need to get through the transaction without putting yourself in a bad spot. That's why every buyer should really look at the full picture, not just the smallest possible number on paper. Because getting to closing is one thing, getting there with a smart plan is completely different. Seller concessions or seller credits can change the whole deal completely. Seller concessions can make a huge difference in how much money a buyer needs out of pocket. In the right transaction, the seller may be able to help cover some of the buyer's closing costs and prepaid items. And when that happens, that total cash needed from the buyer can shift a lot. And that doesn't mean every seller will do it, doesn't mean every deal can be structured that way, but it does mean buyers shouldn't assume that they have to carry every piece of the transaction by themselves without looking at their options. And this is where strategy comes in. You might think as a buyer that you're short on cash when the real issue is that nobody's really sat down and walked you through how the deal can be structured to put yourself in a better position to keep you from bringing as much money to closing. This is why guessing is such a bad strategy. If you're trying to figure out how much money you need to buy a house through random advice, it's not enough. You don't need vague opinions, and you don't need a generic calculator and blind optimism. You need somebody to break your deal down and give you real categories and show you exactly what those numbers are going to look like. Because the answer changes based on loan type, purchase price, taxes, insurance, concessions, and how that file is built. Some buyers are closer than they think, and some need more time. Some have enough income but not enough liquid cash, and some are opposite. Some have enough cash but they don't have enough income. Some have enough cash but they just need a better strategy. So this is why clarity early in the process helps so much. It saves time and lowers stress and keeps you from making bad assumptions in either direction. Seller concessions by loan type is a whole completely other topic. I could talk for hours on what you could do with FHA loans, VA loans, conventional loans, non-QM loans, bank statement loans. There's rules around every one of those loan types, and we have caps and limits tied to each one of those that can and cannot be spent on seller concessions and things like that. So I'm not going to get into that too deep now. Just know if you're looking at one of these types of loans, I can figure that out for you. Here's the real takeaway. If you're a first-time home buyer in Florida and you're trying to figure out how much money you actually need, stop focusing on only the down payment. You need to look at the full cash picture. Down payment, closing costs, prepaids, escrow setup, earnest money, inspections and upfront costs tied to your transaction, and then what it looks like when you're done. And that's how you get a real answer. And once you have that answer, you can build an actual plan. Maybe you're ready now. Maybe you need a little bit more time. Maybe you just need to tighten up a few things, and that's all fine. Everybody's at a different point in their journey. Guessing is what gets people stuck. If you want real numbers, here's what you do next. If you're serious about buying in Florida and you want real numbers based on your situation, reach out to me. Call me, message me, let's break it down properly. I can help you look at the full picture, estimate what your cash to close may look like, identify the pressure points, and show you exactly what options might be available. You don't need more noise, you need a clear plan. So if you're tired of guessing and you want real answers, contact me and let's get to work. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.